Time, be excited. I got a few short ones today. Do you know who I am? A boy says, the principal is so dumb. The girl, do you know who I am? The boy says, no. The girl says, I'm the principal's daughter. The boy, oh. Do you know who I am? The girl, no. Boy, good, as he walks away. Hard test questions. Mother asked her son, Billy, were the questions hard on your history test today? Billy responded, no ma'am, the questions were easy. It was the answers that were hard. How farmers tell time. Years ago, I was a big city boy preaching in a small country town. I wanted to learn everything country so that I could fit in. As I was searching for Widow Jones's farm, I got lost on the back roads. I saw a farmer walking into his barn, so I stopped for directions. He was just beginning to milk his cow, but took time out to tell me how to get to the Jones farm. By the way, I asked him, do you know what time it is? He leaned into the udder of the cow and said, 12:30. I started to leave, but I just had to know. I told him, hey, I just moved from the city and I really want to know the ways of the country. How could you tell what time it was? Sit right here on this stool, son, he said. So I did. And so my mind immediately thought, well, he's going to make him do all these farm tours. He said, now you're becoming a country boy. He just got free work out of him. But he says, now grab hold of that udder. I did. Before this, my closest experience to this was grabbing a milk carton. Now lean into the cow and lift up the udder. I did. Lean over and look right over there on that wall. See, that's the clock. And when the little hand is on the 12 and the big hand is on the 6, it's 12:30. Oh, man.
That's country.
That's country. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the words. And when I preach this morning, I really want to focus on what are the idle words that we're using in everyday life that can bring before life or death, or the words that we're speaking, over ourselves or saying about ourselves, or even in songs. If you like to sing songs, there's a lot of songs that I'm just like a jukebox, just a walking jukebox. It just only knows about 3 words to every song, you know what I mean? And a lot of the words, I began to sing them, and as I began to sing the song, the words, I realized that these words are not healthy words, right? They bring forth death, not life. And so a lot of times I find myself having to change the words before they even come out, you know what I mean? And sometimes I just try to work hard to make myself not sing them sometimes, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I want to focus on that. What are the words that you're saying in just everyday life? What words are you saying to yourself and others and whatnot and things of that nature? So there's a group of frogs. A group of frogs, they were traveling through the woods, and 2 of them fell into a deep pit. All the other frogs gathered around the pit. When they saw how deep the pit was, they told the unfortunate frogs they would never get out. The 2 frogs ignored the comments and tried to jump out of the pit. The other frogs kept telling them to stop and that they were as good as dead. Finally, one of the frogs took heed to what the other frogs were saying and simply gave up. He fell down and he died. The other frog, however, continued to jump as hard as he could. Once again, the crowd of frogs yelled at him to stop. The pain and suffering, stop the pain and suffering and just die, they yelled. But to the surprise of one and all, he jumped even harder, and finally he did come out of that deep hole. When he got out, the other frogs asked him, why did you continue jumping? Didn't you hear us? It was shocking for them to know that the frog was deaf. And all the time he actually thought they were all encouraging him to get out. He did not want to disappoint them, and therefore he did not give up until the end. What does this lesson teach us, right? There is a power of life and death in the tongue. An encouraging word to someone who is down can lift them up and help them make it through the day. A destructive word to someone who is down could be what it takes to kill them. It could be the final straw, so to speak, that breaks the camel's back. Be careful of what you say. Speak life to those who cross your path. The power of words that is sometimes hard to understand. An encouraging word can go a long way. Anyone can speak words that tend to rob another of the spirit to continue in difficult times. Special is the individual who will take time to encourage one another. Be special to others, right? Another story is Mary. She'd grown up knowing that she was different from all the other kids, and she hated it. She was born with a cleft palate, right? And she had to hear the jokes and the stares of cruel children who teased her nonstop about her misshaped lip, crooked nose, and garbled speech. With all the teasing, Mary grew up hating the fact that she was different. She was convinced that no one outside of her family could ever love her. She entered Miss Leonard's class. Miss Leonard was a warm smile, a round face, and a shiny brown hair. When everyone in her class liked her, Mary came to love Miss Leonard. In the 1950s, it was common for teachers to give children an annual hearing test. However, in Mary's case, in addition to her cleft palate, she was barely able to hear out of one ear. Determined not to let the other children have another difference to point out, she would cheat on the test each year. The whisper test was given by having a child walk to the classroom door, turn sideways, close one ear with a finger, and then repeat something which the teacher whispered. Mary turned her head, her bad ear, towards the teacher and pretended to cover her good ear. She knew that the teacher would often say things like, "The sky is blue," or "What color are your shoes?" But not on that day. Surely God put 7 words in Miss Leonard's mouth that changed Mary's life forever. When the whisper test came, Mary heard the words, "I wish you were my little girl." You see, all the hate speech that she got all those years in school, and one person finally has the wisdom to speak words of life over a girl that needed to hear it. A simple few little word, "I wish you were my little girl," forever changed that girl's life. Have you ever been in the midst of a really good conversation and all at once the conversation just goes south? Right? Have you ever meshed well with someone and all of a sudden things change? Has someone stopped talking to you for no reason whatsoever? I would say most of it could say what? We could probably say, we could answer yes to all those questions. It's important to be able to look at ourselves and see if we could have changed the outcome of situations, like those, or avoid them at all in the future, simply by watching our words. Have you noticed the results of the words that you speak? Think about it, right? Have you noticed the results of the words you speak? Have you noticed them before? Whether spoken over yourself or other people or over situations in life? Are you aware of the things that you say or do you just speak right off the cuff? Oh man, I'm good at speaking just off the cuff, right? I'm real good at that. Speaking without even thinking, right? You realize that your words are powerful. Whether you realize it or not, your words are very powerful. It's just not the words we speak, but our delivery of the words, or our attitude behind the words, and our motivation for speaking the words. The Bible talks the power of the tongue in several verses. In 1 Peter 3:10 it says, "For he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit." Proverbs 17, 27 to 28. He who has knowledge spares his words, and a man of understanding is of a calm spirit. Even a fool is kind of wise when he holds his peace. When he shuts his lips, he is considered perceptive. Colossians 4, 6. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt. You may know how you ought to answer each one. Now, can you oversalt something? Well, we can all attest to that, right? Last night we did, I forgot what they're called, some kind of pork that's just been tenderized, run through the tenderizer thing. And then last time I did it, I put too much seasoning in there and it's so salty we couldn't hardly eat it.
Well, I
And
have to get it all.
so Trina's like, you can cook it, but I've got to season it. So she seasoned everything up, and then then I was able to do it then, because I keep thinking I got to change that flour almost orange right before I start dipping it, and that's not. I mess it up every time. It's like I can't remember that. No, that's too much. So sometimes our speech, sometimes we can put a little too much salt with it. You see what I'm saying? Ephesians 4:29. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perseverance in it breaks the spirit. Not what goes into the mouth defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth, this defiles a man. That's powerful. So if we understand the power of our words and apply what the Bible says about them to our lives, we have the ability to change outcomes, to make a positive difference and speak life to others. This isn't some new age idea, right? It's not about speaking our truth or speaking things into existence. It's about speaking with intention, speaking truth and speaking out love God's way. Then keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. How many times have we spoken evil things over ourselves? Said harsh things. We criticize ourselves and we say harsh things over ourselves. How many times have our lips told lies, We were really good with it as we was growing up as kids, I know I was, You call them little white lies. They weren't like big lies. To me, there were like different lies. There's like white lies, little lies, and there's like big lies. And I'm like, I'm not that big liar like those other kids. I just use little lies. And there's a big difference. I'm better than those other kids, because they take it way too far. You know what I mean? But a lie is a lie, right? Period. There is no gray area. Too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible and keep your mouth shut. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. I think that's a very powerful one that really has to soak in. The mouth of the godly person gives wise advice, but the tongue that deceives will be cut off. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. But only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. This is one I struggle with, Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. Boy, I'm good at just running out the mouth and I'm so good. There's very few people at work. There's probably 2 or 3 other people at work that are better than me at really just at cutting down people, crude jokes, really just going after people. And I just like to stick the fork in and just turn it. And I'll do it to one person, and then and if there's 2 people in the room that are having squabbles, I'll say a lie I'll say something that I say, well, such and such said the blah, blah, blah. And I know I'm adding to the fuel to the fire. This person didn't say it, but I just say it, right? And so I stick the fork and turn to this person. And then they start getting mad and they'll say something, and then I'll say, well, such and such told me about you. And I do it right in front of their faces. I don't do it apart. I do it right there in front of their faces. And now these 2 will turn in the break room, and they're spitfire mad. We'll turn at the other guys, and we're just laughing. We're just grinning from ear to ear, just watching this go off. And I said, whoa, guys, there's no sense in this, you know what I mean? And everything. And I'm a really good instigator at that. And my flesh really enjoys that. You know what I mean? And it's been real hard for me to begin to really cut that out of my life. There's been a lot of people in my life that some people, you know, certain guys would date certain people, and certain people that I was like, hey, why aren't you guys coming around no more? They're like, well, she don't like you because you're too the way you talk and stuff. Because I would always pick one person out of the group and always put them down, say hurtful things, and I never meant it from a place of hurt. To me, when I was doing that, it came out of a place of love. Because I loved you, I was doing this. Now, it didn't seem like love, right? To the other person, that this was horrible. This is horrendous. Like, when is he going to stop? He's relentless. But in my own being was like, if I'm teasing you, I like you. If I'm not teasing you, then we might have problems. You know what I mean? Or I'm just trying, or you don't give me good enough material, so I don't pick on you. You right? And so I've really had to change the words that I speak. Right? And so it's been quite a challenge for me, because I truly flourished at that. And then so many times, certain things, people would just say things, and I would just like, oh God, I gotta say this. God says, no, don't say it, you know. And I'm like, oh, this is too good. I mean, they brought this out on a silver platter. They said it themselves. I'm like, this is gonna be so good. He's like, don't say it, you know. And it's so hard, you know. And it's so hard even when we have things going on in our own life. You know, we get frustrated. It's so hard not to say things about ourselves. Well, I'm just a dummy. I'm stupid. I can never do this. I can't do that. You don't want to do those things, because you're heaping horrible things on yourself that are not true, right? You got to change the words that you speak into positive. So there's this Japanese scientist, Masaru Emoto. Anybody ever heard of it? I've heard of Dennis Wood. I mean, you don't know him? No. He performed some of the most fascinating experiments on the effect that words have on energy in the 1990s. When frozen water that's free from all impurities will form beautiful ice crystals that look exactly like snowflakes under a microscope. Has anybody seen this anywhere on the internet where they do this? No, nobody. Water that's polluted or has additives like fluoride will freeze without forming crystals. In his experiments, Emoto poured pure water into vials labeled with negative phrases like, I hate you, or fear. After 24 hours, the water was frozen and no longer crystallized under the microscope. It yielded gray, misshapen clumps instead of beautiful, lace-like crystals. In contrast, Emoto placed labels that said things like, I love you, or peace, on vials of polluted water. And after 24 hours, they produced gleaming, perfectly hexagonal crystals. Emoto's experiments proved that energy generated by positive and negative words can actually change the physical structure of an object. The results of his experiments were detailed in a series of books beginning with the hidden messages in water. You can see the astounding before and after photos of these incredible water crystals. And in another experiment, Emoto tested the power of spoken words. He placed 2 cups of cooked white rice in 2 separate mason jars and fixed the lids in place, labeling one jar thank you and the other you full. The jars were left in an elementary school classroom, and the students were instructed to speak the words on the label to the corresponding jars twice a day. And after 30 days, the rice in the jar that was constantly insulted had shriveled into a black, gelatinous mass. The rice in the jar that was thanked was as white and as fluffy as the day it was made. This dramatic example of the power of words is also detailed in Emoto's work. How many times a day do we throw our words away? We say things like, I hate my hair. I'm so stupid. I'm such a klutz. We never think that these words bring negative energy into our vibration and affect us on a physical level, but they do. Emoto's experiments were conducted with water. Why? Because sound vibrations travel through water 4 times faster than it does through open air. Consider the facts that your body is over 70% water, and you'll understand how quickly the vibration from negative words resonates in your cells. Ancient scripture tells us, right, that life and death are in the power of the tongue. As it turns out, that is not a metaphor. Some of us are in the habit of using the same negative words over and over again. Just out of habit, we use these negative words over people, over our situation, over ourselves. The problem is that the more we hear, read, or speak a word or phrase, the more power it has over us. That's because the brain uses repetition to learn, searching for patterns, consistency as a way to make sense of the world around us. Only after being burned a few times will you understand stove hot, burn, right? And you don't touch it no more. Hot coals in the fire, burn, don't touch no more. You may not remember the exact date of the Civil War, but odds are you still remember what 6 times 6 is. Because you had to repeat your multiplication tables over and over and over again, drilling them into your consciousness. I'm sure if you experience having a song stuck in your head all day long, like I do, you'll try as you might, you just can't get the melody out of your head. Repetition is the most powerful tool to imprint something into your minds and keep it there. This is a particular concern when we consider a phenomenon called the illusion of truth effect. This basically proves that any statement we read, see, or speak regularly is seen as more valid than the one we're exposed to only occasionally. Amazingly, it makes no difference whether the information is true or false. The only thing that matters is how often we're exposed to it. They did some research at the University of California, Santa Barbara, that clearly shows that a weak message repeated twice becomes more valid than a strong message heard only once. Even one repetition has the power to change our minds. The same goes for pictures, which are just thoughts and ideas concentrated in image. Repetition increases our mental validation of anything we're exposed to, which is why it works so well in political propaganda. We're not fully conscious of what we're exposing ourselves to consistently. Consistency will trump your truth every time. So consider how many times you falsely called yourself stupid, untalented, ugly, or anything else. You begin to understand how your internal propaganda shapes the false image of who you truly are, right? And so, think about the things that you are taking in, right? I'm sure everybody can attest to this, that if you worked in certain places at work where maybe the company you worked for was a very negative company, like everybody hated working there, and you worked there, it's hard to go to work every single day there, isn't it? Because you may not hate your job, but everybody else, when you get there, everybody else is bashing the job. So it's hard to go to work there. It's hard to enjoy doing what you do if everybody else is bashing you, even though you may not mind it, right? There's so much. You think about why is the world in such chaos the way that it is. Look what Hollywood has done, right? I mean Hollywood, from the very beginning, they just began adding certain things to certain shows every single day. And there was so much comedy, good, clean comedy, that we enjoyed it, but they'd add little things from here and there that were just taboo back in the day. And slowly but surely, you look at the shows nowadays, and it's just mind-boggling from where we went to where we are now. That they would never allow on TV, and now the things they allow on TV. But then what are the things that you're taking in, right? We've talked about the fact that, you're not supposed to have idol worship, but in everyone's house, almost everyone's house, not everyone's house, but almost everyone's house, probably 90% of the world you go to, they got this thing on the wall that all the furniture is facing it, right? It's called a TV. You're worshiping this TV, right? And how many hours a day do we watch this TV, right? Or this little thing here, right? And so it becomes your master. But what are you watching on that you're taking in, and what effect is it having on you physically, spiritually, mentally, financially? What kind of effect is it having on you? Because the more you take this in other words, all these studies are showing the more negative stuff you take in, it has an effect on you. If you take in more negative stuff than you do positive, you're going to be affected more negatively. You have to work hard. You know, so many people like, well, I went to church Sunday, right? And I've done it in the past when I used to go to church. I know other people have done it, but they'll like, they go to church on Sunday and then they'll come back next Sunday and like, oh, I knew it. I wonder where that was, and their Bible will still be in the pew. And then sometimes I'll ask them, I say, well, you got another Bible at home? No, this is my one right here. So how much do you think they got in the Word that week, right? It's not enough just to listen to one sermon. We have to take this Word of God and really apply it every day to our lives. We really have to take time to put on praise and worship music, godly music, and not just worldly music, right? I've always remembered about what Sandy would said about, the one dog was always having all these problems there for the longest time. And then they finally just put on Christian music all day and turned the sound up a little bit when they left the home, and then they'd come home and the dog was more calm then, right? It's amazing the effects that the Word of God, positive energy, can have on us. And you look at these, just the study of crystals, but our bodies are made of 70% water. You think about that. That positive energy. Isn't it amazing how that, it was amazing just that one time when I helped out with football. A lot of those kids and the inmates that work with me. It's amazing when I quit bashing them and saying harsh jokes, but when I begin to say positive things, it's amazing how the countenance of those people change. It's amazing how the countenance of those players, those young boys change. It's amazing how the countenance of those men, some men that are on my work crew, might be 65, 70 years old. And how that I, being a young man to them, start saying positive words and saying good things about their work and things about them, how it changes them totally. Total transformation in the people. How that I can have people come in, they can hardly lift their head up. They can be so strung out on drugs from psychology and begin sharing just a little bit of the Word of God. Sometimes I share it that it's not even scripture. I just say it like everyday life, right? But I'm sharing stuff scripturally, but without saying it. And they take on this knowledge. They're listening. I get them to quit taking those pills from psychology. I get them to start thinking positive about themselves, and it's amazing how these men, they'll come in one day. I'm like, who are you? Well, I'm such and such. No, you're not such and such. I said, he would just stand there and just stare at the wall. I said, where's that guy at? Oh, I finally quit taking those pills you told me to quit taking. I said, I don't even recognize you. You're such an amazing person. Where you been this whole time? This is the person I need working for me. And it would change. But you would see whenever they had hard times, they'd go back to the pills and they'd go back and just stare at the wall. They couldn't function. But if they had someone to believe in them, if they had someone to help them do the horrible things that they did in life, begin to infiltrate them with truth and love, it was amazing how they could transform themselves from being just a zombie to being a regular human being. We go all the time in life we've got to consciously begin to harness the power of the words of our own selves, the ones we're using. We've got to harness the words that we're speaking over ourselves, over our spouses, over our children. If you say something and you see someone's countenance change, they may have taken, sometimes people, because of how Satan's attacking them, sometimes they can take your speech or your word differently. It happens all the time in text now. everybody likes to text instead of talk, right? And then it happens in text, and then people are offended by text, and they're like, what do they mean by this? And I mean, conversations at work or the home will just go on and on forever, like, well, I don't know. Call and ask them. But no one wants to call and ask them. Just like, well, I don't know what they mean by this. You know? I'm like, what is this? I don't know. Right? Because we're all being affected differently. It all hits us different. Right? And so a lot of times, some words, when we say certain words, we see the person's countenance, sometimes we need to explain what we meant by that. You know what I mean? That it wasn't meant to be insulting, or it wasn't meant to be bad. You know, that's just sometimes my use of words is not, I'm not real good with English, so sometimes my vocabulary is just, I have very few words I use, and then sometimes I use it and it's not in the best context, and so sometimes I need to explain myself better, right? But think about the things that you're saying, everyday life, about situations, about your finances, about just everything in life, because it truly affects them. You have to really begin to say things in a positive light to truly change. There is truly life and death in the power of your tongues. I believe it more so than anything. Going through my healing, that's one of the number one things I held on to. Was number one, I never wanted to say the word Satan or Lucifer. I would just say enemy. I didn't want to give him any more power and authority or recognition than he already has. It felt like he has. So I refused to say his name, right? I just didn't want to say it. And so, but also for me, I mean, I find so much, just in everyday world, there's so much that's said, so much that we repeat and say, so much that is catchy sayings and different things from songs or movies, and then I go back and I look at those words and I look at those things we're saying, I'm like, wow, that's horrible. I remember when I was sick, sometimes I'd go back and listen to some old songs, right? Listen to some old songs, and it would take me down memory lane sometimes with some of my buddies, and you know that there was three of us that used to run around a little bunch together, and two of them are dead. And I listened to those songs, and I remember this song about this one buddy, and this song about that other buddy, and I began to listen to words of another song that talks about, you know, death or dying and stuff, and all of a sudden I got the spirit would be like, the devil's trying to take you out. You're singing these songs, and the devil's trying to take you out. And I was like, what? And I began to really listen to the words of the song. I was like, oh no, we ain't doing that. So I had to shut that off and get back to some praise and worship stuff, you know what I mean? I started getting sad thinking about the friends that had died that's so young. And how that, man, I'm the last one. I'm like, but I said, devil, you ain't getting me, son. I said, I wish, devil, I'd had more of the word in me back then when you were attacking them. But devil, you ain't getting me. We have to change our mind. It has to be a positive one. As much as possible can be all the time. Saying good things about people. If you want to see somebody changed in your life, if you want to see circumstances change in your job or in your marriage or in your family, you've got to begin to speak life over those situations. Not as you see it. The truth you see, that may be truth, but if you're speaking that truth, it may be an evil, wicked thing. So don't speak that truth. Speak the truth as you want it to see. Does that make sense? As the piano player and song leader come up this morning. To me, the biggest gift you can give yourself and the people around you is, man, just speak words of life. Positive stuff. It's amazing, you know, at work, the boss went away, Steve Fowler went away, and one of the things that they had taught him at one of the deals was how the difference between boiling and not boiling is 1 degree. And he just kept using that all the time in sales and everything else. It's just one thing away, right? It just takes one word away from somebody just saying, okay, I'll buy that, I'll buy this or buy that. You got to go the extra mile. Just one degree, just one word of affirmation. A good affirmation sometimes is all a person needs to get them through the day when they're about to fall apart. Think about it.